Werner Straight, the son of a noble military family and a disciple of the strongest good wizard, is a renowned researcher and developer of magical tools with precise analytical abilities. Although often ridiculed because his talents and hobbies differ from his family's, he continues to pursue his dream of becoming a magical tool researcher. After being expelled from the academy by the new rector following his mentor's departure, Werner does not become depressed. Instead, he discovers kindness and broader experiences, meets many people, and continues his innovations despite being shunned by jealous parties, with support from those who understand him. Magical tools are devices that can perform tasks and provide benefits to their users, requiring only a small amount of mana to activate them. Magical tools can improve the quality of human life. Even if used by someone who has no mana or doesn't understand how to use magic, they can still operate these tools. That's why magical tools can be found everywhere, from simple small families to royal households, and this fact also applies in the country of Lanefordin. One day at Sage Academy, there was an associate professor named Werner Straight, a young man with long white hair tied back and an always expressionless face. In a room, he met an old man with his characteristic glasses perched halfway on his face. He was the rector of the academy. With a dominant tone, he informed Werner that, simply put, starting tomorrow, he didn't need to do any work. Hearing this sudden announcement, Werner paused in confusion with his flat expression. On the other side, the rector and a fat man who was another lecturer stood silently, waiting for Werner's response. Confused, Werner asked if the rector's decision was an order for him to take long-term leave. Firmly, the rector replied that Werner was not being ordered to take long-term leave, but was truly being fired from his position as a lecturer. With a disappointed tone and a sigh, the rector explained that Werner was slow to think as usual. Werner asked again in the same tone why he was being fired. The rector commented in a mocking tone that Werner himself didn't even realize the reason for his own dismissal, and he was fed up with him. He then explained that from the beginning, Sage Academy was the kingdom's leading institution in magical tool development, a noble and beneficial research institution. However, Werner not only spent an excessive amount of time on his pet projects, but also all his students had poor grades. Hearing that, Werner innocently thought to himself that his research took so much time because he was given many trivial tasks, and besides, his students with low grades all produced good results. The rector continued explaining in a raised voice, while pointing that Straight had deviated far by neglecting his main duties and doing as he pleased. He also emphasized that all his deviant actions would end today. Moreover, now the founder of the academy, who had also made Werner a lecturer here, had resigned. Not long after the rector said all that, the fat man came and brought a table on which several items were covered with a large cloth. He then pulled the cloth and revealed several items like glasses, a pot, a megaphone, and others. Seeing all those items, Werner realized and reflexively commented that all those items were magical tools of his invention. In a mocking tone, the rector asked what Werner meant by his inventions. The rector then grinned widely, while continuing that all those items belonged to the academy, including the blueprints and patents. He then threw ordinary items like framed photos, pens, books, and others, saying that Werner could only take all that trash. He also added that Werner was very welcome to take all that trash and leave the academy. In a humiliating tone, the rector added that he assumed Werner could recreate those items after leaving the academy, even though the patents remained with the academy. Although he maintained a flat expression, Werner still looked sad and shocked from the position of his lowered eyebrows. He then gathered the items considered trash by the rector and took them away from the room. Not long after the door closed, the chubby lecturer named Dean immediately laughed and praised the rector in a sycophantic tone, commenting that the rector's actions were truly extraordinary. He was also fed up with Werner's constant complaints. The rector then said that as long as they had Werner's research results and magical tools, they could gain more profits, especially since Werner was no longer useful to them. Dean nodded in agreement, and still in his sycophantic tone, commented that of course he would register the rector as the co-inventor of all the magical tools made by Werner. The rector grinned widely and commented in a proud and malicious tone that with the departure of the old rector, who was also the founder of the academy and Werner, those two nuisances had disappeared, and now the academy was in their hands. The rector then ordered Dean to continue and complete the research done by Werner. Dean grinned and nodded in agreement and obedience to the rector. He also said that with his intelligence, the research that Werner needed a lot of time for would be completed in less than 3 days. Hearing that, the rector laughed contentedly and commented that he was sure they would be satisfied with this result. After Werner was expelled from the academy, in one of the rooms in the academy, a loud voice was heard scolding Werner to get out of his room. Not just one room, but all rooms and their owners firmly rejected Werner's presence. No matter the reason, even to withdraw his own money stored in the academy, he couldn't do it because of the rector's orders. Finally, he was truly expelled by the academy guards. Realizing all that, Werner looked confused because all the places he always visited while working as a researcher and lecturer at the academy now rejected him. Although he knew the rector was behind it all, he had no choice but to follow the plan he had just made. In the midst of thinking about his next steps, suddenly a man's voice was heard shouting in panic and great surprise. The man, in a sad and panicked tone, said to his employee while pointing at the damaged magical tools scattered on the road that all those magical tools were custom-made for the prince. If they ended up in this condition, he wouldn't be able to give them to the prince at tomorrow's ceremony. A young man in traveling merchant attire was seen sitting with a pale and panicked face, muttering in a panicked and confused tone that he had wrapped and secured the magical tools properly and according to procedure. But how could they end up like this? In the midst of their confusion and panic, without them realizing, Werner had been there for a while and was analyzing the magical tools scattered on the road. They noticed Werner's presence when he commented that all those tools had fallen and shattered into pieces. As if ignoring the surroundings and the merchant's warnings, he walked over to the magical tools and started picking them up to repair them. Of course, the head merchant was very shocked and panicked, ordering Werner not to touch the magical tools carelessly because it could make the damage worse, especially since the tools were very complex. But Werner ignored him and instead muttered to himself while starting to repair them. Without needing even a minute, one magical tool in his hand was already fixed. Seeing that, the head merchant could only stand frozen with wide eyes in shock and confusion, even asking if this was some kind of trick because he knew that tools like this couldn't be repaired so quickly. Again, as if ignoring the head merchant's words, Werner immediately crouched down and placed his hand on the road. A transmutation circle appeared on the road, reaching all the damaged magical tools scattered there. In an instant, all the magical tools were repaired. Innocently and flatly, Werner said that with this, all the magical tools were fixed, and he had also improved their mana consumption efficiency. Of course, seeing that, the two merchants were extremely shocked, their mouths agape. Now their panic and confusion were replaced with relief and gratitude. So grateful and thankful, the head merchant immediately prostrated while thanking him. On the other hand, his employee also prostrated and in a tone almost crying with joy thanked straight. The head merchant then pleaded with Werner to let them repay his kindness. Hearing that, Werner was a bit surprised and then explained that he wanted to go to a certain place, and if they didn't mind, he wanted to ask them to let him hitch a ride there. Hearing the request, without thinking twice, the two merchants immediately granted it and started departing. After a few minutes, the merchant's horse carriage finally arrived in front of the gate of a noble residence. After saying goodbye to the merchants, Werner stood silently in front of the gate of that noble residence. He knew that the noble residence belonged to someone named Margrave Straight, a noble family in charge of the kingdom's military affairs. In short, this was his own family's residence. In the past, both his brother and father had tried to make him a soldier, but after trying hard, he managed to sway their intentions and succeeded in becoming a magical tool researcher. He also understood that if his father and brother found out about him being fired from the academy, they would try again to make him join the military with them. That's why he paused first in front of his house gate, because he had to find another way to enter without being noticed by his brother and father. Since from the beginning he intended only to take what he needed from his room and leave as quickly as possible, he chose a method like a thief breaking into his own house. Yes, he used the window to enter his own house, and his action succeeded. He could even predict and avoid all the servants in the house. However, that success didn't last long after a woman's voice was heard greeting Werner in an annoyed tone. Knowing who owned the voice, Werner's body immediately tensed, and he turned toward the voice with a very shocked gaze. His face even paled as he greeted the woman. She was his older sister named Bigret Straight. In an annoyed tone with a sharp gaze, the sister commented that Werner hadn't visited or exchanged news with his own family since he left home. And now Werner was in his own house, sneaking around like a thief. In a commanding tone, she then ordered her brother to come to her room right now. Since he had been caught, Werner eventually obeyed his older sister and went to her room. Upon arriving there, the servants quickly prepared sweet snacks on the table and tea. While relaxing there, the sister's tone changed to her usual relaxed one. She also told her brother about a letter she received early this morning. The letter was from Professor K, the founding rector of the academy, meaning Werner's teacher. The sister also explained that Professor K had explained what had happened at the academy. Her calm tone changed back to annoyed as she asked her brother. She understood why her brother didn't ask for help from their eldest brother or father, but why didn't he ask for help from her? Werner could only smile awkwardly and apologize. He then explained that he didn't do it because he didn't want to burden his older sister. Hearing that, the sister just stared at her brother annoyedly before her expression changed to a small smile with her cheeks slightly blushing while sighing softly. She then handed over an envelope and explained that there was something more important where Professor K had also sent a letter for Werner. She also explained that in her opinion, Professor K understood Werner's current situation. It was natural for Professor K to understand such things because he was a sage or a good wizard who had lived a very long time, and she felt he had written something in his letter that might help Werner out of his current problem. Hearing all that, Werner then opened the letter and read it. The contents expressed his concern for Werner as his disciple. He also understood that his sudden departure from the academy must have made his disciple worried. But he didn't need to worry about him because he was now at a hot spring bath on the village outskirts. Not very useful news, but Professor K also conveyed the reason for leaving the academy, which was because his lower back or hip bone was starting to hurt, and because of that, he bought a house with a hot spring to live in after his resignation. Even so, he realized that if his disciple was reading his letter, then most likely his disciple had been expelled from the academy. He intended to make Werner his successor, but considering there was a new idiot becoming the rector at the academy, he was sure the new rector would make excuses to expel Werner from the academy. He also expressed his opinion about this incident, where in his view, his disciple's expulsion from the academy was just a trivial matter. He even asked Werner to conduct any research he wanted and take steps as he pleased. He even acknowledged that Werner was a talented person who could create new innovations in various magical tools, and Werner should not waste his talent. Therefore, he suggested Werner focus on his research. He even didn't hesitate to let his disciple use his old lab in the open area. After all that, he also added an important note, even asking Werner to read it carefully, where he informed that he was the strongest and the only best, so he asked Werner not to be arrogant and do his best in his research. Reading that part only made Werner sigh softly while smiling and comment to himself that his teacher was still as strange as usual. After reading the letter's contents, Werner sank into his thoughts. He knew to start his research, he needed to get funding and a way to obtain materials. Besides that, he also felt it would be better to get colleagues or assistants in his research. But before all that, he had to build his own lab, a place where he could seclude himself and conduct any research as he pleased. Just thinking about it made Werner's eyes sparkle as he became excited. On the other hand, the sister who saw her brother thinking focused on his future plans made her smile softly and comment in a happy tone that this was the little brother she knew. She knew and understood that her little brother was someone who always focused on what he liked without caring about what others said, including their father, until finally his persistence made him achieve what he wanted, namely becoming a magical tool researcher. She liked her brother's gaze full of burning ambition, and this time too, that gaze remained the same. She then called her brother and, while smiling happily and proudly, said that Werner didn't need to worry about others who couldn't understand him, because she would always be by his brother's side and she would always be there if her brother needed her help. Hearing that, for a moment Werner was silent. Her words seemed to press a button that had never been pressed before, and it made him happy. Werner smiled softly before thanking her and saying goodbye to prepare to leave again. Unlike before, seeing her brother's departure, the sister now smiled proudly and prayed for his success. After taking all the items from his room, Werner then left carrying a suitcase and began wandering toward his destination. He passed day and night alone, even through areas with strong winds and dust. After passing all that and 2 days had gone by, he finally arrived at his teacher's old lab, which was truly in an open and wild area. With panting breath, he dropped his suitcase and in a tired tone muttered to himself that he had finally arrived. From afar, His teacher's old lab looked like an ordinary house, but when he approached it, he was quite surprised because its size was actually very large. Even the door size was large enough to fit about 3 people at once. He also wondered how such a large lab could be built in a wild area like this, but he felt no need to be surprised anymore by his teacher's eccentric behavior. As he was about to enter and start his research, suddenly an echoing sound was heard from afar, which over time became clearer. Hearing that, Werner reflexively turned toward the source of the sound to check it. There, a girl was seen running as hard as she could and starting to tire, but her fear kept forcing her body to keep running. Behind her, a large dragon was seen flying and chasing the girl at a fairly close distance, making the girl scream hysterically because she was almost devoured by the dragon. The girl's steps became faster and faster because her life was at stake. On the other hand, Werner looked a bit surprised, not because of the girl in danger, but because of the dragon itself. He had just seen that dragon, which he only knew about from a book, where that dragon was the oldest type, or often called the Walking Destruction. He also knew that this type of dragon was very rare to show themselves around humans, so he felt a bit surprised seeing that type of dragon around here. When he looked more closely at the dragon, with his precision, he found something odd about it. He found an object attached to the dragon's forehead. At the same time, the dragon's claw moved and attacked the girl. But luckily, the dragon's slash missed. But unfortunately, because of that, the girl's footsteps immediately tripped and she fell to the ground. Getting that opportunity, the dragon didn't waste time and immediately launched another slash. The girl reflexively closed her eyes, preparing to receive an attack she couldn't possibly block. But no matter how long she waited, the attack never reached her. When she opened her eyes, she was shocked by what she saw. In front of her, Werner was already there, raising his hand which emitted a magic circle. At the same time, the magic circle blocked the dragon's claw. Seeing that made the girl stunned in shock and comment to herself that she had never seen a magical tool like that before, and she had to see that magical tool. On the other hand, Werner looked relaxed, starting to analyze the dragon, especially the tool. While his hand still blocked the dragon's claw, he muttered casually that he couldn't analyze the magical tool up close, but if observed carefully, he could understand that the magical tool was taking over the dragon's consciousness, and he could also say the dragon was being brainwashed. Therefore, he felt the dragon's controller must be around here, but he realized something when he dodged an attack from the other claw. Werner easily dodged and even parried the claw with his bare hand, but thanks to that, he realized the dragon was not yet fully under the controller's control. He could tell that from the dragon's left hand movement, which seemed less aggressive than the other. Seeing that, he wondered if the controller was having difficulty controlling this dragon. Not long after, the dragon roared and raised its head before spewing fire toward Werner. Casually but precisely, Werner could dodge it. He even carried the girl with him to avoid the fire breath. Thanks to that, his hypothesis became clearer because the dragon's left body part seemed slower than the right. Without any wasted movement, Werner jumped to avoid the fire breath, but instead of jumping back or to the side, he jumped forward and directly pulled out the magical tool attached to the dragon's forehead with his bare hand as he passed the dragon. When he pulled out the magical tool, now Werner understood how the magical tool worked. At the same time as he and the girl landed, the dragon also collapsed to the ground. Without thinking twice, Werner immediately released the girl as if he didn't care and started focusing all his attention on the magical tool. He understood that this magical tool had damage or failure in its magic circuit. If he managed to repair that part, the magical tool should work properly. So understanding, he kept muttering about the brainwashing effect of the magical tool being very disturbing, until finally he decided to remove that feature. And with that, he felt the magical tool would improve the connection to the user's nervous system. His hands were so skilled that his fingers only looked like they were touching it. On the other hand, the girl who was truly ignored asked Werner in a confused tone about his identity. Instead of answering the girl's question, Werner turned while still muttering about the magical tool. According to him, with the adjustments he made, now the tool was no longer a brainwashing tool, but a magical tool used for nerve healing using low frequency. He also explained while still muttering that this magical tool had the effect of relaxing muscles and nerves, and was very effective for dealing with stiff shoulder muscles and pain in the lower back or hips. Remembering this function, he recalled his teacher's problem, who also had issues with pain in his lower hips. Hearing all that made the girl shocked and amazed. But what made her very amazed and shocked came from how quickly Werner could repair a magical tool in such a short time and also modify it very effectively. On the other hand, at the academy, the rector's voice was heard scolding Dean harshly. He questioned what Dean had been doing all this time because until now he hadn't made a single magical tool. Worse, a week had passed, and what Dean had promised before about completing Werner's research project in less than 3 days had totally failed. Scoldings and table bangs continued as curses were hurled at Dean. On the other hand, Dean himself could only stand there with a pale and panicked face. He couldn't refute his boss, who was on the same side as him. He also felt annoyed and frustrated with his current situation, because no matter how he thought about it, all this felt unreasonable. He understood well that now he had all the research documents from Werner. But even so, he could never understand a single document he read. No matter how many times or how long he read it, he still couldn't understand any of it. He started questioning Werner's way of creating all these incomprehensible theories, and also how he conducted the research to make documents he couldn't understand like this. He understood that he had spent more time, energy, and experience in research and magical tool development than Werner. But still, he could lag this far behind. Now in the same shocked tone, he asked the same thing to himself as the girl. Who exactly was Werner? On the other hand, Werner, who had just explained all that to the girl about the magical tool he repaired and rearranged, as if ignoring his surroundings, instead went back to tinkering with the magical tool and intended to add another feature like a potentiometer as an output power regulator. In the throne room, a man with blonde hair was seen sitting on the throne. He was Claus Langforden, but he looked very shocked, confused, and annoyed when he heard the news about Werner being expelled from the academy. He even commented that the academy was foolish in their actions, and he didn't just use Werner's name but added the honorific lord, or sir, to show his respect for him. Hearing the Crown Prince's comment, one of his subordinates agreed, saying that in his opinion, this was a great tragedy because they had to lose a talented magical tool specialist like him. Hearing that comment made the Crown Prince sigh rather long but deeply, showing how disappointed he was with the Academy's decision and his subordinate's comment. In a disappointed tone, he remarked that none of them, including his own subordinate, could understand how dangerous the current situation was because the continuity of this kingdom depended on him. Hearing the subordinate comment again, in a somewhat pessimistic tone, that it was true what he said, that Werner was only a magical tool specialist, not a wizard specializing in attack magic. Claus then asked his subordinate to tell him how the last war ended. His subordinate answered that their kingdom won the war by wiping out the rebel forces, numbering more than hundreds of strong soldiers, with just a newly developed magical tool. Claus then explained that the magical tool that made their kingdom win was made by Werner when he was 12 years old, and he was also the one who invented the bomb. Initially, he was developing an explosive magical tool for mining, but its explosive power, which was practiced and tested, was enough to knock down several members of the Wizard Association who were creating protective magic to shield them from the explosion. Not only did it stop there, Werner was also able to use explosive magic equivalent to the bomb's explosive power and repeat it more than 100 times. Hearing that, the subordinate's face immediately turned pale upon hearing it. Now he knew how valuable and dangerous Werner was if he ever considered their country an enemy. The Crown Prince also emphasized that Werner was a wizard capable of completely destroying an entire country very easily. Therefore, their country must not do anything that could provoke him. Although Werner always showed no resistance to them at present, all that might change in the coming moments. After saving a girl, Werner helped the girl return to the city by carrying her, considering she was exhausted after being continuously chased by a dragon. However, when they arrived at the kingdom's gate, the guards without hesitation pointed their spears at Werner, showing clear resistance. They even firmly said that they were honorable guards with the duty to protect the main gate to the sacred capital of the kingdom by any means, and they could not allow dirty people like Werner. Hearing that harsh rejection made Werner quite surprised. He just realized that all this time the guards always let him pass because he always used his family name or on behalf of the academy. He looked a bit down because in his initial plan, he intended to get his own research lab, but somehow everything turned out like this. Back to a few days earlier, precisely after Werner saved the girl. After the dragon left, Werner introduced himself to the girl. The girl also introduced herself and asked him to call her Latte. She thanked him for saving her life. She then asked if Werner knew Professor K. Innocently, Werner nodded and confirmed it. Latte then explained that she came to this kingdom to learn about magical tools under Professor K's direct guidance. She had submitted this request to him multiple times, and finally he agreed to meet her in person. Hearing that, in his usual innocent tone but with a hint of pity, Werner informed her of the situation, that currently Professor K was no longer in the kingdom. Hearing that, of course, made Latte shocked and confused about what that meant. She then asked where he was now. Werner honestly shook his head and answered that he also didn't know, and what he said was only that he was at a hot spring bath. Hearing that, Latte became even more stunned in shock, until there was only the sound of the wind blowing in the silence. In a disbelieving tone, she asked then if that's the case. Her words were cut off, and Werner nodded while saying that Professor K would not make Latte his disciple. That fact was like a lightning strike for Latte, because what she had hoped for all this time had to be dashed after experiencing all her misfortunes earlier. She even immediately sat down limply there and became down again when she was confused about what to do next. Because he couldn't bear to see her, Werner told Latte that in this kingdom there was also an academy to study magical tools, and the academy was named Sage Academy. They also had advanced and the best equipment in the current era and had a good reputation. He then inwardly denied his words that although there was a downside, namely the people above, who were none other than the rector and dean. He then offered to make a recommendation letter for Latte to enter the academy. He did it because he was quite close to one of the professors in the academy. Because basically Latte wanted to learn magical tools. Hearing that opportunity made Latte very excited and accepted it. So happy, she held Werner's hand and shook it while continuously thanking him. However, that happiness didn't last long after Latte felt pain from the wounds she received. Many scars were visible, and even some wounds still dripping red fluid. Seeing that, Werner sighed softly and commented that it would be very dangerous for Latte to go to the academy alone with wounds like that. And that's why Werner ended up returning to the capital. He indeed intended to help her, but somehow he ended up involved in troublesome problems like this. In the midst of the commotion, Latte was seen trying hard to convince the guard about their identities. She even didn't hesitate to show her identification document, but instead of a good response, the guard grinned mockingly and accused her identification document of being fake without checking it first. He even said that the document wasn't worth checking. Hearing that, of course, hurt Latte because the document she brought was genuine. But the guard stood firm and ordered them to leave his presence immediately. However, Latte, who had gone through many things and misfortunes to get there, couldn't let it end there. She immediately grabbed the guard's arm and pleaded for him to check her document first. She even explained that it would be a big problem if she couldn't enter. Seeing Latte's persistence, the guard became fed up and annoyed. Without hesitation, he pushed Latte's body very hard while yelling at her not to interfere with his work. The push made Latte, who had a light body, quite thrown back. Luckily, Werner quickly caught and hugged her body. Werner then commented in a questioning tone to the guard that wasn't one of a guard's jobs to check identification documents. He also emphasized that they, the guards, shouldn't make decisions like that based on their own judgment, but follow the work procedures. He then turned the guard's words back simply and asked, "Isn't that the real job, Honorable Sir Guard?" Werner's words were like salt sprinkled on the guard's wounds, very effective in making their short tempers explode immediately. The guard gritted his teeth and gripped his spear tightly, while saying in an annoyed tone that every document brought by lowly people, like the two of them, was nothing but fake documents. The guard then pointed his spear while saying to Werner that Werner would be arrested for document forgery. Even without hesitation, the guard thrust his spear toward Werner. However, Werner casually made a slight head movement to avoid the guard's thrust. Calmly, he said that if being lowly and disgusting was the main reason the guards couldn't trust the two of them, then it would be better for him to clean it with a little water spray. With one finger snap and placing his hand on the ground, a magic circle appeared along with other interconnected magic circles, and from each magic circle, controlled water sprays emerged. With his hand movements, Werner could control the water sprays very skillfully and immediately pushed the two guards until they were overwhelmed and sprawled on the ground. After saying that, Werner's words were proven true, where now his and Latte's bodies became clean from dust by his water magic earlier. Even Latte herself just realized it. When the two of them were about to enter and ignore the guards sprawled there, suddenly a man with a thick mustache who was a captain appeared and asked the sprawled guards about the situation. Seeing their superior arrive made the two guards panic and try to defend themselves, saying while pointing that Werner and Lotte tried to pass the gate with fake documents, and when they tried to arrest them, they resisted. The captain furrowed his brow, not intimidating but in wonder. He then approached Lotte and asked to show her document. Lotte then showed the same document to the captain. While receiving the document, the captain said that document forgery was a serious crime. But when he was about to continue his words stopped immediately upon realizing something odd in the document. His face became very shocked, even almost pale. Even the guards who came with the captain were also shocked when seeing the document. After realizing the oddity, without thinking twice, the captain and the two guards with him immediately gave a respectful bow and lowered their heads. The captain immediately apologized and called Lotte with the honorific miss. He informed her that the gate would be opened for her as soon as possible. Seeing that, the two arrogant guards became very shocked but still annoyed and immediately asked the reason their captain suddenly bowed. Hearing that stupid question made the captain's body tremble with anger. In an angry tone, he commented that how could the two of them make this problem so messed up. He then firmly and full of anger told them to prepare for heavy punishment when their duty at this gate was over. The captain then politely told Lotte that they would immediately prepare a horse carriage for her and take her to her destination. Seeing that, Werner felt that even without him, Lotte was now safe from here on. He then called her and gave her a recommendation letter from him. He also asked the guards to escort her directly to Sage Academy. The guard immediately bowed and accepted his request. Werner, while smiling, stroked Lotte's head while wishing her success in her studies. Receiving friendly treatment from Werner made Lotte blush shyly, but also admiring him. As Werner left, Lotte bowed to Werner and thanked him very much. Seeing that, the people watching the incident suddenly buzzed about Werner, and among those people was an old man with glasses who also watched the incident. 5 days passed after that incident. At night, Werner was seen engrossed in making his own magical tool. He smiled satisfied seeing his magical tool and understood that his magical tool would be perfectly completed after he continued his work a little more. He then sat down for a while to rest and think about the durability test of his magical tool that he would do later. But not long after, he heard a knocking sound at midnight. Hearing that, he immediately asked who was knocking on his door. But there was still no answer. Feeling strange and odd, Werner approached the door and prepared fire magic in his left hand just in case. When he opened the door, there was a little girl with long red hair and also horns and wings. When looked at in more detail, the girl also had fangs and very sharp red eyes. Seeing Werner's face, the girl grinned while saying in an excited and happy tone that she finally found Werner. She also said that she thought she wouldn't be able to meet Werner again. Without thinking twice, the girl jumped and hugged Werner, while in a cheerful and joyful tone calling Werner her master. On the other hand, Werner just stood silently confused about the little girl's identity. In a closed room, a man's voice was heard reporting to his superior that there was no doubt that the successor of Professor K was a man who was none other than Werner, who appeared at the main gate this afternoon, and they were sure he had a connection with the artifact they had been searching for years. Then the man's report was replied by one of the leaders, who was a woman with a face-covering cloth sitting on a throne. She answered in a dominating tone that at least they had a chance to get rid of that artifact. She then smiled and praised the good news. She then asked about the magical tool from the academy. The man answered that it seemed the development of magical tools there was not progressing smoothly. Hearing that, the leader became annoyed and commented that their side had fulfilled their wishes on the condition that the two of them, namely the rector and dean, must provide their side with magical tools made by the former rector K, especially the newest ones. She felt that her two subordinates were taking their task very unseriously. That's why she felt she had to straighten them out again. In fact, in her opinion, it would be better if they stole the magical tools directly from Professor K's old lab in the wilderness rather than waiting for results from her two stupid subordinates. Hearing that, as a useful subordinate, he intended to take that role. But his words were immediately stopped by a woman's voice ordering the man not to think strangely. The sound of heavy footsteps and clashing equipment filled the room. The woman's voice was heard again in a mocking tone, saying that this task was impossible for the man who was someone incompetent, where the man always ran away without being able to kidnap the successor. Hearing and recognizing the voice, the man looked very shocked and reflexively turned, but before fully turning, a spear had stabbed him from behind. Red fluid immediately gushed and scattered everywhere. On the other hand, the The woman who did it casually with a small smile on her face swung her spear to clean her spear from the red fluid. Her eyes were half open, but her gaze was so sharp and confident. With hand gestures and facial expressions full of passion for the task, she then said to the sprawled man that the Divine Light Church no longer needed worms like him. The woman in the same tone said to the leader that this task could be entrusted to her. She promised in her own name, Halfas, to bring results exceeding the leader's expectations. The leader didn't look too pleased, but she commented and asked that their church side was very happy that Halfas was so impatient to do it. But they also believed that the lab place was also where the latest developed bomb by the successor was there. Therefore, they were curious how Halfas would handle a magical tool capable of wiping out hundreds of their troops. Halfas grinned full of confidence and answered that she would lead the strongest troops numbering 300 people and see the results directly with her own eyes. Hearing that, the leader laughed contentedly and finally allowed Halfas to carry out the task. She ordered her to steal the magical tools in the lab and erase the successor, namely Werner, and also the artifact. She then said in a tone full of solemnity, but also pride while holding a crystal ball, that all of it was for the prophecy. After Werner's first meeting with the winged little girl, she kept sticking to him while continuously calling him master. Because of the confusion, Werner finally asked the little girl's identity. Hearing the question, the little girl just realized that it was natural if her master didn't recognize her because he had just seen her in another form. Excitedly, she pushed Werner's body to go out of the lab while inviting him outside for a moment. She then said that this was her true form. Not long after, her body started to glow, and in an instant, her body transformed into a large size, and now she became a dragon with her characteristic excited speech and tone. She introduced herself as Hattie the Ancient Dragon. Seeing her true form, Werner didn't show his shocked expression and innocently said to himself that, oh, so it's her. Hattie then explained that their dragon race always repaid or returned favors to someone, and this time Werner, as her master, had saved her from the mind control magic. Therefore, she came to serve Werner as her master for her entire life as repayment. Hearing that it would be troublesome for him, Werner without hesitation refused and said that Hattie didn't need to do that. Hearing the refusal, Hattie in a panicked and pleading tone said that if she went home without doing anything, she would be laughed at and made a mockery by other dragons for her entire life. Werner felt awkward and reluctant to accept her. He commented that Hattie was exaggerating about it, but suddenly Hattie approached her snout and started sniffing around her master's body. She then asked Master, "Isn't there an unpleasant smell around here?" Hearing that, Werner's body immediately froze in shock. He just realized that the smell might come from his own body, considering he had secluded himself for 5 days nonstop. In the end, Werner was forced to accept Hattie as his servant because she was very insistent. Even to the point of excitedly, to repay his kindness, Hattie forced to help her master wash his body. Although excited, she was still careless like a little girl in general. After finishing, Werner then asked Hattie if the dragon race had no sense of shame. Hearing that, Hattie instead asked about that sense of shame. Werner explained that humans don't usually show their bodies in front of the opposite sex. Hearing that, Hattie started closing her eyes and placing both hands together, like a hermit about to transform. And instantly, Hattie now transformed again into a dragon, but with a small body, like a cute baby dragon. In her usual excited tone, she said that she would serve Werner in this form from now on. Hearing that, Werner immediately held both her cheeks and pressed them playfully, while saying that he had never accepted Hattie as his servant verbally. Hearing that, Hattie was shocked again and started pleading again. In a pleading and panicked tone, she explained her usefulness to her master, where she could fly in the sky and shoot giant fireballs. She even put on a pleading expression with teary eyes while saying to let her stay with her master. Seeing how stubborn Hattie was, Werner didn't mind her presence too much. Moreover, he also didn't sense any hidden intentions from her words, and he could get help from her. After thinking for a moment, he then started stroking Hattie's head and accepted her. Hearing the acceptance from her master, Hattie became very happy and hugged her master again while thanking him very much. Since she had been accepted, Werner without hesitation immediately gave her first task to Hattie. On the other hand, outside the lab building, on the cliff, there were hundreds of spears raised to the sky. One of the spear bearers informed his superior, Halfas, that the preparations were complete and they, Halfas's troops, would be ready to charge on his command. There, Halfas grinned proudly and happily at his subordinate's news and praised him for preparing everything quickly. As a junior officer of the Divine Light Church, he had the motto fast and strong. With that principle, he intended to use a plan by surrounding Werner's lab from all directions and win this battle very easily. A simple and predictable plan. Full of enthusiasm and confidence, Halfaz announced to all his troops that they would carry out the cleansing exactly at sunset on Professor K's successor. Hearing the news, all his troops shouted full of enthusiasm and slammed their spears simultaneously to the ground while starting to chant their motto that they always held. Hearing his own troops holding firmly to his motto made Halfaz laugh contentedly, but in the middle of his laughter, suddenly one of his subordinates came to report from the scouting team, where according to the report, a few moments ago, a man they could guess was the successor and an unknown creature were seen leaving the lab. Besides, the two of them also didn't notice the scouting team until now. Hearing that, Halfaz's smile widened because he was happy. He commented that this situation made it very easy for them because their target left their safe place. He then saw Werner and Hattie from afar. He felt that Werner looked like someone weak. Even he didn't really wary of the small creature beside him. Because in his opinion this was a golden opportunity for them, Halfaz accelerated his plan and started giving orders to all his troops to start his plan now. He also reminded his motto again to all his troops to do it fast and strong. He immediately swung his hand while giving the order to attack in a shouting tone full of enthusiasm. Once the order was given, all his troops immediately shouted full of enthusiasm down the cliff and headed straight to the lab house occupied by Werner. On the other hand, Werner and Hattie were truly unaware of all that big thing. Armed with his magical tool in his hand, Werner gave directions to Hattie. Hattie excitedly accepted his directions and started transforming her body into her true form and flying into the sky. When flying above, Hattie asked her master again to confirm if it was really okay to shoot fireballs here. Werner only gave a hand gesture, not minding it, to Hattie before activating his magical tool, where his magical tool was a protective magic. On the other hand, Halfaz's troops who charged earlier became shocked when they suddenly saw a dragon in the sky and reported it to their superior. Halfaz, who also joined them, immediately gave the order to keep charging forward and he would handle the dragon. Hattie immediately released a fireball from her mouth and shot it to the ground. Unknowingly, her fireball shot was right toward where Halfaz's troops were. In just one fireball shot, her attack exploded with a very large explosion and hit Halfaz's troops behind him. That of course made Halfaz himself freeze for a moment because he was very shocked by the large explosive power. He turned back to see the explosion's effect, which made his face even paler. He even didn't notice the fireball that almost hit him earlier gave another attack effect until it gave a small slash wound on his cheek. Hattie, who truly enjoyed carrying out her master's orders or directions, started releasing fireball attacks more rampantly. She shot multiple fireball attacks at once, creating a rain of fireballs for a moment. At the same time, Werner started testing his magical tool by increasing the mana input and also increasing the protective strength. Instantly, Werner's shield glowed, and the fire rain hit and exploded on Halfaz's troops who were charging earlier. Instantly, the ambush turned into a punching bag for testing a magical tool. Even when they finished, Werner smiled satisfied because his test had ended perfectly. On the other hand, Hattie also felt satisfied and relieved because she could release such brutal attacks without worrying about anything. When Werner was thinking about improvements to his magical tool and felt he heard something during the test, suddenly a familiar man's voice was heard greeting Werner by saying that Werner always didn't hold back during tests. Turning toward the source of the voice, a man was seen in typical merchant attire complete with gloves and a robe to maintain his body temperature. He was Eugen. Eugen laughed as he guessed Werner was testing a new magical tool as usual. While returning to his horse carriage, Hattie in a curious tone asked her master about Eugen's identity. Werner explained that Eugen was a traveling merchant who always worked with him while at the academy. Eugen then brought a wooden box full of food and other cooking ingredients to offer. Eugen explained that Werner's older sister, none other than Bigrit, told him that Werner was here. Therefore, he chose to visit him while looking if there was a magical tool he wanted to sell to him. Werner looked a bit surprised and commented that Eugen's action was very helpful to him. But wouldn't it be easier to get magical tools directly from the academy in the kingdom's capital rather than having to go here? Eugen looked a bit awkward discussing it, but he still explained that he always liked Werner's magical tools. Besides, since Werner's departure from the academy, the quality of magical tools made by the Academy had dropped drastically. As a result, the Academy was now in a very difficult situation. On the other hand, at the same time, in a dark room, there was a man with slicked back hair and a thin mustache sitting on a sofa with a narrowed but sharp gaze at the person bowing on the floor. His shoe stepped on a magical tool shaped like a glass tube until it cracked, showing how annoyed and disappointed the man was. In front of the man, two familiar people were seen, namely the current Academy Rector and Dean. The two of them now looked very pale, facing their dangerous situation. The man with slick back hair and a thin mustache was named Gerald, the CEO or Managing Director of the official partner store of Sage Academy. Gerald, while smiling widely but with an aura of anger, asked, "So the magical tool the Academy side offered them today was a magical tool that could turn ordinary water into hot water, right?" Dean, in a stuttering tone and cold sweat on his face, nodded and answered that they also had other magical tools, all in high quality and the best condition. Hearing the last sentence made Gerald smile annoyed, and without hesitation immediately smashed the magical tool shaped like a glass tube until it shattered into pieces. Seeing that made Dean panic and immediately question Gerald's action. Casually and in a humiliating tone, Gerald answered that what he meant was that all the magical tools made by Dean were clearly just cheap magical tools replicating existing magical tools and mass-produced. Without hesitation, he took a box full of Dean's magical tools and started dropping them to the floor one by one and crushing them with his foot right in front of the maker. He also clearly said that every magical tool brought by Dean today was nothing more than a pile of trash. He then threw the box and said again that they helped the Academy side to expel Professor K's successor, none other than Werner, and they even provided very significant donations for its continuity. Gerald's smile immediately grinned widely and full of anger in his smile. He then said that, and now the result was not in accordance with the contract they agreed upon. In accordance with the contract they agreed upon, they now became the official partner store of the Academy to sell magical tools made by Professor K, the genius who was very skilled in magical tools that had lasted for 800 years. Gerald's hand immediately held Dean's shoulder, which immediately made Dean panic half to death. Gerald casually took out a box from his jacket, while saying that for those who couldn't fulfill a contract would get punishment. That was the rule in the trading world. After saying that, Gerald's two henchmen immediately approached the Rector and Dean, then held their bodies tightly, which immediately made them panic. Gerald then explained that the two of them didn't need to worry because his side wouldn't go straight to the punishment session. Gerald then opened the box and took out a serum syringe. He then continued his words that they wouldn't get punishment immediately because the two of them would fulfill their contract using their own bodies and prove themselves that they could be useful to their side, the Divine Light Church. Hearing that, the Rector and Dean panicked tremendously and started to fear half to death. Back to Werner's side, Eugen gave him an envelope and explained that he got the letter from Professor K right before he departed here, and in his opinion, the letter was addressed to Werner, so he brought the letter with him here. Receiving the letter made Werner himself surprised, because not long ago, he also received a letter from his teacher. In the letter, Professor K wrote that currently he was sure his disciple had completed the research on his protective magical tool and started thinking about building his own research lab there. He also didn't forget to inform about himself, who now had built his own research lab that felt like a vacation on a tropical island. Again, eccentric information from his teacher. He also wrote about the steps he recommended for Werner, where in his opinion, to make a lab, Werner needed a lot of money. He was also sure Werner didn't have that much money, nor connections to merchants. Therefore, he suggested Werner sell his magical tool to Eugen. He also wrote a request that Werner must do before he went to the capital. After reading it all, Eugen in a curious tone asked what Professor K said to Werner that he had to go through him as intermediary. Werner answered honestly that he asked him to do something and sell his magical tool to Eugen. Werner then took out the magical tool he had just tested and explained that only this magical tool was available for now. Seeing a hexagonal tube made Eugen curious and asked how it worked. Werner immediately gave a demonstration by creating a small-sized shield protecting Hattie as the target. Seeing the small-sized shield alone made Eugen shocked because it was a protective magic. Moreover, he wondered how such a small tool could create very complex protective magic requiring a lot of mana. Without saying anything, Werner started tinkering with his magical tool, and now the protective magic that was initially as small as Hattie immediately expanded, and enlarged with a radius many times larger than the initial size. Seeing that, Eugen's body immediately froze in shock, seeing the protective magic could be enlarged. Even so shocked, Eugen's narrowed eyes now opened wide upon realizing that the size of this magic circle was equivalent to the shield installed in the kingdom's capital. Werner just stood silently with his usual innocent expression facing Eugen's reaction earlier. He then commented that the current problem was mass production at this time would be very difficult. In his opinion, magical tools only truly become useful when they have clear functions and can be mass-produced. Hearing his opinion, Eugen laughed softly and nodded in agreement. In a happy tone, Eugen commented that Werner's magical tool would still attract a lot of interest from people to buy it. Therefore, he asked Werner to sell the magical tool to him. Without hesitation, Werner nodded in agreement to sell it. After they agreed and made the transaction, Eugen apologized to Werner for signing the contract at their store. Werner didn't mind and told him that he would visit his store after he completed his teacher's request here. After the agreement was reached, they shook hands, and Eugen said he would wait for him in the capital later. Eugen then left using his horse carriage again. Werner then stretched his body and started preparing to carry out his teacher's request. On the back side of his lab building, someone was seen coming out of the forest staggering. The voice was none other than Halfaz's, who turned out to be still alive and survived Hattie's attack that unintentionally bombarded his troops. Halfaz kept cursing Werner for making him end up like this. He felt that Hattie's fireball attack earlier was impossible for him to win against. But returning to headquarters without bringing any results was also not an option for him. Therefore, he at least had to bring some results when he returned later. When he came out of the forest, he found Werner and Hattie, who looked ready to leave, complete with suitcase and robe. Seeing that made Halfaz grin happily because he got his second golden opportunity. Without delay, he with light steps sneaked closer to the lab building without Werner noticing. With agile hand and foot movements, he immediately cut the window frame very precisely without leaving any trace. When he stepped into the lab, he checked the surroundings and found no signs of other people inside. The further he explored into the lab, the more he didn't find signs of the artifact he had been searching for. That made him wonder if the artifact had been taken away by Werner earlier. But as he entered deeper, luck was still on his side. He found a cabinet full of magical tools shaped like balls, which were the artifacts they had been searching for, the latest bombs designed by Professor K. Halfaz was truly happy because now he wouldn't return empty-handed or with little results, but would bring very big results because he found so many artifacts. He even found the blueprint documents of the artifact. He truly felt very lucky to find important things from what they had been searching for. He then read one of the documents there, where the document contained experiment notes on the tool. It was written there that this latest generation explosive magical tool had defeated hundreds of rebel troops near the country's border. Even so, the safety of this magical tool's user was still a problem and must be resolved before implementation on mining explosive tools. To achieve that, Professor K suggested making a remote detonator. When Halfaz saw the note below where there was a photo of Professor K and Werner, and it was written that the designer and developer of the magical tool was Werner Straight. Reading that immediately made Halfaz's body freeze and his hair stand on end, feeling the horror of that information. He realized that all this time they believed the wrong thing, where they believed the person who made the magical tool that could be a slaughter tool was the good wizard or sage, known as Professor K. But in fact, all of it was made entirely by Werner, and Professor K only gave a little suggestion in developing its safety. Now he knew who he was facing. But thanks to that, he now felt very happy because he uncovered new facts. Now, with the unreasonable attack power earlier, he felt it made sense after reading that information. Because the artifact they were looking for was not really an object, but Werner himself who created it. The nickname, the Hermit, or artifact, was the nickname given by the Divine Light Church, and made him their main enemy over the development of a new explosive that caused them very big losses. They even tried hard to find who the perpetrator of the explosive user was for years, but still failed. But now he found the fact. He was also sure that just with this information alone was enough to make him promoted, and then become the highest-ranking officer in the church. Just imagining it made Halfaz overjoyed, but as if not wanting the joy to last long, suddenly a beeping sound was heard from the explosive ball he was holding. The ball, after beeping several times, emitted a notification sound that the detonation controller was activated. Right after the notification came out, The same beeping sound came from the balls in the cabinet and started to light up. Now all the explosive balls started activating simultaneously in the room. Seeing that, Halfus's face turned pale with fear and shock. He didn't expect his great luck to suddenly turn into his greatest misfortune. He did get and uncover new facts, but those facts now had to be buried again with him. The contents of Professor K's letter and his request were to destroy his old lab, because he realized there was a possibility someone would come and try to use his lab right after Werner left, which would be very problematic. He also told Werner that he had added a remote detonator controller to Werner's latest explosive tool, so activate the detonator before Werner left. As a result, Werner casually left, while Halfus had to be buried with those facts by many explosives exploding simultaneously. Seeing the large explosion, Werner casually watched the explosion from afar, and now the lab he had only used for 5 days had to disappear completely. But he didn't regret it, and casually continued his journey to catch up with Eugen to the kingdom's capital. While walking, he started planning what he had to do when he got there, like negotiating and making contracts with buyers of his protective magical tool, finding a suitable place to build his own lab, and also visiting his older sister. Just thinking about it made Werner sigh tiredly, because there were many things he had to take care of after this. But he also felt all of it had to be done to live his ideal life as a magical tool researcher. Hearing her masters mutter about what he had to do, Hattie happily offered to help her master achieve all that. Hearing the offer, Werner got an idea. He then asked Hattie to transform into her normal form and ride her to go to the capital by flying. Werner thanked Hattie because riding her had helped him a lot in reaching the kingdom's capital very quickly. Hattie happily helped him and even said that something like this was no big deal for her. And with that, the two of them flew to the kingdom's capital together. Upon arriving in the kingdom, Werner headed to the capital and ended up visiting the royal castle. There, he met directly with the prince named Claw Laneforden. Werner explained what had happened to him, especially about Hattie. Hearing the whole story, Claus looked a bit limp and shocked upon hearing all the chaos that occurred in just 1 week. Claus also asked Werner not to come to the capital while riding a dragon, because it would cause panic among everyone. Hattie was seen engrossed in eating the snacks on the table. Claus then told Werner that he was very grateful Werner returned to the capital, and he also had someone he wanted to introduce to him. Not long after, the room door opened, and a girl in noble attire complete with a small crown on her head appeared before him. Claus explained that she was the third princess of the Lamet kingdom named Charlotte Chantal Lamet. Charlotte, with a happy smile, called Werner as if she knew him. She then apologized for not thanking him properly before. Then, she explained while smiling widely and thanked him for everything. Hearing that, Werner paused for quite a while with his flat expression. Even Hattie, who was engrossed in eating, turned curiously to her master who was silent. In an innocent and confused tone, Werner asked Charlotte's identity, considering she seemed to know him so well. Hearing the question made Charlotte quite shocked because Werner really didn't recognize her. In the end, Charlotte told him that she was Latte, meaning she was the girl who met Werner when being chased by Hattie, who was under control. The prince then explained that he was also quite surprised to hear that Charlotte already knew Werner, and that would make their discussion this time easier. On the other hand, Werner just smiled awkwardly, not expecting that the innocent-looking girl was actually a princess from the neighboring kingdom. The prince then explained that Werner should already know about their neighboring kingdom, the Lamet kingdom. According to the information he got, lately the Galatea Empire had turned its attention to the Lamet kingdom to take it over and make it part of its territory. To respond to this threat, the Laneforden Empire and the Lamet kingdom formed an alliance in the form of a magical tool research agreement. And the first step to implement the agreement, their kingdom invited the princess to learn about magical tools in their empire. However, on her journey to Professor K, who agreed to make her his disciple, she was ambushed by bandits and lost all her guards, until finally Werner appeared and saved her. The Empire side had also captured one of the bandits who attacked her and interrogated him. From the information obtained, those bandits were hired by the Galatea Empire. Besides, the group that hired them was obsessed with a certain magical tool, and that magical tool was made by the sage from the academy in their empire, none other than Professor K. Hearing that made Werner, who was calm, a bit shocked. The prince continued explaining that normally they would let Charlotte study at their academy, as recommended by Werner before, but with other possibilities like spies scattered and threatening Charlotte's life, letting her study at the academy was no longer an option. That's why he asked Werner to come here, because he wanted Werner to make Charlotte his disciple. Werner, who had been calm and drinking tea, immediately spat it out when he was very shocked by the request. The prince laughed seeing Werner's reaction and said that of course he wouldn't ask Werner to do it without compensation. He knew that Werner currently had problems conducting research in the capital due to the rector at the academy, right? Therefore, he would use his authority as prince to solve that problem for Werner. After the meeting, Werner, Hattie, and Charlotte went back to the area that had been promised to Werner. While flying in her small body, Hattie commented in her excited tone that it turned out this was the area that would be built into her master's research lab. On the other hand, Werner was reading the letter he was holding. He thought building his own lab in the capital would be complicated by the academy, considering he was expelled dishonorably. But thanks to the prince and his older sister, she had provided land for him in their own family property area. Even his sister gave a simple reason, where in her opinion, if her brother's lab was too far, she would have difficulty visiting later. When Werner thought about the construction, suddenly a man's voice was heard calling Werner with bro, and in an excited tone. When turning toward the man, 3 men without shirts were seen posing full of enthusiasm, showing off their muscular and macho bodies. Even their bodies looked shiny and glowing, showing how trained their muscles were. The man with the headband informed Werner that the construction process was going according to plan. Seeing the behavior of the 3 construction workers who were so eccentric made Charlotte quite shocked, and in a puzzled tone, she asked Werner about them. Werner, who already knew them, answered with a small smile on his face that they were construction workers from a construction company named Vargram, and they came to work at the prince's call for him. The Vargram construction company itself was a group consisting of professional and strong craftsmen, who were also famous for owning the most skilled and strongest craftsmen in the capital. Even so famous, they were trusted to build royal noble residences. Even so professional that other nobles who wanted to use their services had to wait for years. With them handling his construction, Werner felt at ease because they would surely meet his expectations. While watching the construction workers work, suddenly Charlotte called Werner. In a shy and somewhat guilty tone, she said that taking her as Werner's disciple like this must feel like a disturbance to Werner himself. Therefore, she intended to cancel it. But before finishing her words, suddenly the workers' voices were heard in their still excited tone informing their boss that they found a large boulder. The workers also explained that the boulder was too hard for them to crush and level. Besides, building a building on such a boulder was impossible to do. Hearing that, their boss, the man with the headband, while showing off his muscles again, ordered his subordinates to stop complaining. In a firm and excited tone, he said that actually with this difficulty, it was the right time to show and hone their skills further. Full of enthusiasm, he started inviting his subordinates to start leveling the large boulder. Truly an optimistic leader. And sure enough, with burning enthusiasm and their muscles tightening strongly, they started swinging their pickaxes continuously. The leader also ordered his subordinates to crush the boulder into small pieces using the muscles they had trained all this time. Hearing the enthusiastic talk, Werner could only mutter to himself that he doubted that method would work. Time passed from sunny weather, now it became rainy. The workers along with Werner and the others sheltered in the workers' tent. There, the workers' leader stared at their damaged pickaxes, even broken and bent at the ends. Yes, their enthusiastic efforts earlier ended in vain. While putting on a puzzled and somewhat disappointed expression, he commented that they had made most of their equipment destroyed like this. Werner tried to give a suggestion by asking about using explosives. The leader shook his head and answered that using explosives wouldn't solve the problem. Instead, it would add other problems because the explosion from explosives could damage the surrounding fields and also affect the plants. Hearing that, Charlotte was quite shocked and commented that this problem felt quite serious. She hoped she could do something for this problem. On the other hand, Werner started reaching into his jacket pocket and took out a small magical tool that looked like an emblem. He felt this was the right time to use the miniature of his barrier-making magical tool. He then called the workers' leader and asked about their spare tools that he could use. The leader looked a bit surprised by his request before pointing to the end of the tent where many damaged tools were scattered. He explained that all their tools were there, including their spares, but all were in damaged condition. Hearing that, Werner didn't think twice and started taking one of the tools that still looked good. After the tool was in his hand, Werner started using his magic to manipulate the material and reshape the tool. Seeing his tool glowing made the leader puzzled and curiously asked about Werner's action. One by one, Werner reshaped the materials until finally in seconds, the damaged pickaxe now turned into a large drill bit in new condition. Seeing that drastic change made everyone very shocked, except Hattie, who looked at it with an innocent smile, as if not understanding but amazed. The workers gaped and observed the object they had never seen with wide-open mouths. Werner then asked the leader to try using the tool. When the tool was turned into a magical tool, now its way of working became very different. When used, the magical tool immediately rotated and started drilling quickly until it easily made a hole in the boulder. In a shocked and amazed tone, the leader commented that he couldn't believe this magical tool could make a hole in the boulder they failed to conquer earlier. Werner in a calm tone explained how it worked, that the magical tool had a spiral-shaped drill bit and with a mechanism that made it rotate, allowing the user to dig the ground more easily even without adding more strength. Besides, at the tip of the drill bit, he had added his protective magic to strengthen its durability, so in his opinion, the magical tool should be able to penetrate any hard object. However, unfortunately, he currently only had one protective magical tool that he could use to make the same drill magical tools up to 4 pieces. But he should be able to mass-produce the protective magical tool in the future, so it would make their work easier in the future. The leader then walked and commented in a heavy and authoritative tone that he didn't understand anything about the mechanism of the tool earlier, or the protective magic earlier, or anything Werner talked about earlier. He then shook hands with Werner very tightly and immediately hugged Werner very tightly while shedding tears of happiness. He said that what he understood now was that Werner was their savior. Werner, who was suddenly hugged tightly by the leader's sturdy body, could only resign with a pale face because of the hug. As if not letting Werner rest, the other workers came and embraced with their muscular arms while thanking him. One by one, the workers continued to thank him, and for Werner, who was not used to crowds, it made him overwhelmed facing their enthusiasm and spirited nature. On the other hand, Charlotte, who saw the workers' reactions so grateful to her teacher, became even more amazed. A smile full of determination appeared on her face, as if the doubt she felt before had disappeared. At the same time, after a solution was found, the sky started to clear up again. Full of enthusiasm, the leader again ordered his subordinates to return to work with the new tools they received. Several days passed, and now Werner's lab had been completed. The building truly looked shiny clean and very sturdy. Even Charlotte was amazed when seeing the research place looked quite magnificent. Werner also commented in a disbelieving tone that his lab building was completed earlier than he expected. He was surprised because the workers really gave everything in building it. Charlotte then called Werner in a still shy tone, but this time she had made up her mind. While holding her hands tightly, she brought up again her request that she said a few days ago. While bowing, she pleaded with Werner to make her his disciple. The wind rustled and caressed the two of them, as if becoming a silent witness between them. Werner paused for a moment, before then asking Charlotte to bring water and firewood before she came to his lab tomorrow. Hearing that, Charlotte was puzzled and questioned it. Werner in his usual flat tone answered that he needed it for his next research. Hearing that, Charlotte understood that she had been accepted as his disciple. Her face immediately beamed with happiness, and she thanked him. Werner just nodded, and then reminded her to return to her lodging while escorted by the guards. So happy, Charlotte even hummed cheerfully during her journey back to her residence. Around her, several knights were seen protecting her. But suddenly, a warning voice was heard from a knight behind her, followed by the sound of impacts and groans from the knights. That, of course, made Charlotte shocked and reflexively turned toward it, only to find the knights protecting her already sprawled on the road. Charlotte hurried to approach them and tried to help while trying to find out what happened. Just approaching the knight behind her, the same voice was heard again from the opposite direction, and the other knights fell again. Seeing the knights protecting her falling one by one strangely made Charlotte confused and panicked. Without her realizing, a pair of hands were ready to cover her mouth from behind. Quickly, the hands immediately gagged her mouth, and the other hand held her arm. 2 people in robes were seen with their faces covered by hoods. The 2 of them quickly dragged Charlotte's body into a small dark alley. In a heavy and hoarse voice, as if his vocal cords were damaged, one of them mocked Charlotte by saying that getting a disciple from that trash really made him want to laugh. His partner nodded in agreement. One of them commented again in the same voice, and in a mocking and happy tone, that at least Charlotte would be useful in their plan for revenge. Turning toward the person gagging her mouth, the person's face was visible, where he was the academy rector whose face had now rotted from inside with uncontrollable eyes. Even his teeth were missing and broken with drool continuously dripping, as if he could no longer think. But there was a magical tool attached to his forehead, the same magical tool as the one attached to Hattie's forehead when she went berserk before. The rector then ordered his partner, none other than Dean, who was already in the same condition as him, not to kill Charlotte now, because the two of them needed her to lure Werner out of his nest. Their laughter broke when thinking about their evil plan. On the other hand, Charlotte could only make muffled sounds when hearing their evil plan aimed at her own teacher. In Werner's new lab, Werner was seen wiping food crumbs from Hattie's mouth, who was eating. Suddenly, the door opened, and with panting breath, one of the knights guarding Charlotte arrived and told Werner that they were in trouble. He explained that Princess Charlotte had been kidnapped. They had tried to search and track the perpetrator who attacked them. But until now, they hadn't known where the perpetrator went. Besides, one of the perpetrators left this piece of paper there, and the paper was addressed to Werner. The knight handed the paper to Werner. Opening the paper, there were red fluid stains there. Werner read the contents of the paper silently. It was written there that the perpetrators, namely the new rector and dean, had kidnapped his disciple and held her hostage. Seeing the paper's contents made Hattie panic and suggested to her master to rescue her immediately. In a calm tone, Werner told Hattie and the knight that he would go alone. Hattie was doubtful about her master's idea, but Werner still refused and explained that he could guess who the mastermind behind this incident was. While putting on his research coat, he also asked the knight to tell the other knights not to do anything for now. After a while, at night, Werner arrived at an old experiment hall inside the academy. In the dark room, Werner immediately called the two perpetrators and told them that he had come as they requested in the paper. In the dark room, echoing laughter was heard chuckling. The rector was seen having removed his robe and hood, while Dean still wore his robe. The two of them held a magical tool shaped like a staff, and also grabbed Charlotte's hair, whom they were holding hostage. Seeing the two of them back in a condition that could be said to have rotted, made Werner a bit shocked because his guess was correct. In a mocking tone, the rector praised Werner for still being able to read, even though he was an incompetent person. He then immediately threw Charlotte toward Werner while saying that he no longer needed her. Werner reflexively caught Charlotte's body, and at the same time, the rector and dean swung the glowing staff-shaped magical tool toward Werner. And in a short time, a lightning blast with strong destructive power struck toward Werner. A large explosion occurred until it created thick smoke in the hall. Slowly the smoke faded, and the characteristic line of a protective magic was visible, and Werner along with Charlotte looked fine inside the protective magic. The magical tool used by Werner shone brightly and started to dim when he turned it off. Seeing Werner still safe made the two of them click their tongues annoyed because Werner still had a magical tool. The rector then commented that it would be easier for everyone if Werner just disappeared. As if ignoring the rector's words, Werner turned toward the floor that was destroyed due to the destructive power of the magical tool they used. Werner commented in a calm tone that the mana capacity of the two of them increased drastically. Feeling ignored made the rector growl annoyed until it made his cheeks open wide beyond a normal human mouth. In a tone full of hatred, the rector explained that since the day Werner left the academy, their plans completely fell apart. Even the CEO of the academy's business partner store started looking down on them. Worse, now his body had turned into something no longer like a human. In a tone full of hatred, the rector pointed toward Werner while saying that all the misfortunes they experienced were Werner's fault. The rector kept babbling in a tone full of resentment that the person who made their bodies like this said if the two of them succeeded in getting rid of Werner, then he would make their bodies back to normal. Therefore, he ordered Werner to end for their good. In an innocent and calm tone, Werner commented that he didn't really understand, but in his opinion, his request sounded very unfair. Hearing such a calm answer made the rector even more irritated and annoyed. Dean then slammed his hand, which was no longer shaped like a human hand, to the floor, and instantly a magic circle appeared above it. He said that he would make sure Werner wouldn't spout unreasonable things anymore. In a short time, several large-bodied dolls appeared before them, staring at them with cold gazes as they made Werner their elimination target. Dean grinned widely and in a humiliating tone explained that he had modified Werner's old low-level magical tool. He then challenged Werner to determine how long Werner could last from attacks of his own magical tool while protecting his disciple. Directing his hand toward Werner, the two doll-shaped magical tools immediately advanced toward Werner, and several sharp blades appeared and rotated. Seeing the large dolls, and also the large rotating blades, made Charlotte scream in fear. On the other hand, Werner was truly calm. With one finger snap, Werner in an instant charged with very high speed, even to the point that the doll-shaped magical tools didn't have time to move and were immediately destroyed with bare hands. Werner stood in front of his own doll-shaped magical tool and in a calm tone commented to Dean that he had modified too much the magical tool he left in his old lab, but Dean added too many useless functions. As a result, with so many modifications, it made the doll's hinges weak when having to support that much weight. With one finger snap and twisting his body, instantly the doll-shaped magical tool's bodies separated and were destroyed by a little of his magic power. He walked casually toward Charlotte and started untying her. While untying the rope, Werner commented about his curiosity toward the two of them, who suddenly had a lot of mana to use magic along with several magical tools. He then asked the two of them to just surrender. At first, the rector was silent, like resigned, but then he suddenly grinned widely. The head part of the doll-shaped magical tool lying there moved a little, before suddenly the head released several ropes that immediately snatched and tied Werner's and Charlotte's bodies. Seeing that made Werner a bit shocked because suddenly there was a capture tool feature on his old magical tool. Dean chuckled, and while pulling the white cloth behind him, he said that if he could restrain Werner's movement, then his victory was guaranteed to be his. When the cloth was fully pulled, a large cannon was seen already installed there, a cannon that had 4 hoses as mana-filling channels for its explosive power and also a control panel for the cannon beside it. Seeing that made Charlotte very shocked and fearful. She had never seen a magical tool with such a terrifying aura. But even though his movement was stopped and tied by ropes, Werner remained calm and immediately used his protective magical tool. He then asked them what they intended to do with that magical tool. The rector chuckled madly, and his fingers started pressing button combinations on the magical tool's control panel. He explained that the protective magic Werner used wouldn't be able to save him this time. And sure enough, the shield surrounding Werner suddenly shattered, as if something hit it very hard. That made Werner quite shocked. Turning toward the cannon, the magical tool was seen starting to charge its energy. While grinning, the rector explained that he acknowledged Werner was a very competent magical tool specialist, but still, Werner was incompetent without his own magical tool. He started typing button combinations on the control panel again, and on the back part of the cannon magical tool, there was a part that opened, showing a glass tube containing a large magic stone. In a proud tone, the rector said that to defeat Werner, he had prepared all this. Seeing the magic stone made Werner shocked. He knew that it was one of his magical tools intended to be a medical magical tool. A magical tool that could absorb mana from the surrounding air. Initially made for patients experiencing rare cases where they couldn't produce mana themselves. Dean grinned and commented that Werner should know well the weakness of his own magical tool, where this mana absorber magical tool would absorb all mana around it, including from other magical tools. That's why Werner's protective magical tool immediately disappeared and shattered. Dean also explained that he had modified the magical tool so that the collected mana could be shot with full power. Even its destructive power could exceed the destructive power of an ancient dragon's fire breath. The rector grinned again while playing with his mustache. In a humiliating tone, he told Werner that now without a magical tool he could use, Werner wouldn't be able to do anything to stop the two of them. Hearing that, Charlotte's face turned pale with fear. On the other hand, Werner only showed a slightly shocked facial expression. Not long after, the cannon's muzzle shone brightly, ready to spew all the mana it had absorbed. The rector then pressed one button on his control panel, which instantly made the cannon magical tool shoot the mana toward Werner and Charlotte. The explosive power from the cannon was truly extraordinary. Even just from its impact, it was enough to destroy the chairs around it in an instant. A few seconds after the cannon was fired, Werner managed to free himself from his bonds and immediately untied the ropes on Charlotte's body quickly before pulling her toward him. In an instant, the hall now turned into a sea of fire. The entire hall was filled with black smoke and flames from the cannons shot earlier. The rector's body shivered with excitement. While grinning widely, he said that at least they succeeded in getting rid of Werner. He laughed freely, admiring the canon magical tool. He commented that with this weapon on their side, the Divine Light Church, no one would be able to match them. Dean also laughed and praised the rector as usual. When the rector started babbling excitedly again about the canon magical tool and Werner, whom they used as a punching bag for testing, suddenly in a casual tone, Werner was heard asking about Latte's condition. Hearing that made the rector very shocked and start to panic. Werner from behind the flames said in a calm tone that it was time to give a lesson. He truly gave a lesson to the rector and dean, where he explained that a magical tool specialist was someone who was expert and must have knowledge in the magic world more than other things. Werner stepped out of the flames, and while raising his hand, emitting the characteristic light of protective magic, he then continued his explanation that it meant they, magical tool specialists like him, could still use magic without needing magical tools. Charlotte was seen whom Werner protected by hugging her, so she entered the range of his protective magic. Seeing Werner fine, even without a single scratch, made the rector and dean very shocked. The rector in a disbelieving tone commented that a magical tool specialist should be a failed person because they couldn't use magic. Therefore, he was confused with Werner, who could use magic requiring a lot of mana, like the protective magic earlier. Werner answered casually that he needed that magic because he needed it for his own research. But what made him curious now was the phenomenon of sudden mana capacity increase that the rector and dean had now. In a speculative tone, Werner commented whether it was the result of the magical tool attached to their heads. Even so, he still couldn't find the answer definitively. With a serious gaze, he commented again that because he hadn't found the answer, he would research it closer after he defeated the two of them. Hearing that, a cold feeling suddenly pierced their bodies due to the horror they felt. Feeling threatened, the rector reached into his jacket pocket and took out a small box. In an annoyed tone, he commented that how could Werner babble unclear things like that to them. He also told Dean that in his opinion, they had no choice but to use their last option. Realizing what the rector meant made Dean shocked. In a doubtful tone, he tried to refuse and explained that if they did it, the two of them wouldn't be able to return to normal again. The rector, who was already controlled by his emotions, ordered Dean to shut up and threatened to eliminate him if he didn't obey his order. The threat made Dean fearful and forced to obey his order. The two of them then took out the same box from their pockets and took a serum inside. The two of them then injected the serum into their bodies, which instantly black veins started spreading to their bodies from the point where they injected the serum. In a short time, their bodies instantly transformed and kept enlarging along with their voices becoming heavy and echoing. Their eyes turned black, and their skin changed color. Wings of flesh appeared on their backs along with a pair of horns on their foreheads. They truly fully transformed into demons. In a heavy and distorted voice, the rector laughed and said that the two of them should have done this from the beginning. Because with this power, they could destroy Werner, who now looked like a small worm before them. Seeing their terrifying and unreasonable transformation gave a terrifying and threatening aura to Charlotte until she was fearful again. But on the other hand, Werner looked still calm and even stood in front of Charlotte to protect her. The rector chuckled while raising his hand, which emitted black lightning sparks around it. On the other hand, Werner started to be on guard and amazed by their transformation. The rector then raised his hand, instantly creating a black magic circle above. Suddenly, several black fireballs shot toward Werner and exploded with strong destructive power upon touching them. Even so, Werner could still withstand it using his protective magic, but he realized that the mana and destructive power of the attack were higher than before. The rector grinned and immediately ordered Dean to do it. Understanding the order, Dean immediately approached the canon magical tool earlier and used his hand to destroy the crystal stone glass tube. He then pulled out the crystal stone, and the two of them immediately flew into the night sky. They weren't fleeing, but enhancing the function of the crystal stone. Yes, Dean immediately activated the magic stone and increased the range of its mana absorption around it. The glass tube that served to reduce and minimize the absorption power of the magic stone. Now, with the destruction of that barrier, the magic stone absorbed mana with a fairly wide range. Even wide enough to make magical tools in the city disappear. Even the city's lighting went out completely like a blackout. Everyone experienced a simultaneous mana blackout, and people started to panic. Even in the royal palace, the magical tool specialists started to be busy receiving continuous reports from various regions. The result of that chaos now made the magic stone continue to expand, grow larger, and keep growing, even exceeding its initial size. Seeing that, Werner could guess that the magic stone grew large due to the mana absorbed from the entire capital. He then prepared again to use his protective magic like before, assuming he would be targeted again by the two of them. Seeing the preparation of the protective magic made the rector grin and in a mocking tone ask, maybe Werner could deflect and withstand their attacks, but would it be enough to withstand their attack this time? Werner asked what he meant by that. Because the rector was already overconfident, he explained in a humiliating tone that this time what they targeted was not just Werner, but the entire capital of this empire. He also commented that according to his observation, Werner's protective magic still had a very limited range. And from that, with the mana they had, they would release a large powered attack on the entire capital area and raise it, even to the point that Werner's magical tools or protective magic wouldn't be able to protect them all. The rector's tone then changed to humiliating and belittling. He said that as a form of their mercy, they asked Werner to eliminate himself now, and in return, the two of them wouldn't attack this capital. Hearing that, Werner paused for a moment, before then directing his hand upward and creating protective magic for the two of them. Seeing that made the rector and dean disappointed because Werner chose to protect himself rather than the city. Then the rector and dean also raised their hands toward the increasingly enlarging crystal stone, and instantly black magic circles like before appeared in large numbers and directed to the entire capital. In seconds, black fireballs appeared and shot in various directions in the capital. However, quickly Werner modified his protective magic. He used the coordinate points of his magical tools that had been scattered and used by the Empire as starting points, and then he duplicated the effect of his protective magic many times over. Although initially there was only one, but by duplicating it in a short time, it became many, and thus a protective magic was created that enveloped the entire capital area. Even so fast that the protective magic was completed faster than the fireball magic launched by the magic stone earlier. Thus, the fireballs shot in all directions were successfully deflected by Werner's shield magic. Seeing the rapid development of the protective magic made the two of them extremely shocked. They didn't expect Werner could do something like that. Werner explained to them that actually his protective magical tool could be installed in various desired locations. He didn't do it before because he felt it wasn't necessary. Hearing that made the two of them even more shocked. One of them even commented that something like that was impossible for even a wizard, even impossible for a high-class wizard to do. Hearing that, Werner commented again that what they said could be called weightless nonsense, because it was impossible for a magical tool specialist to be weaker than his own created magical tool. Hearing that made the rector even more furious. He directed his hand to the magic stone and intended to gather mana again and shoot the same magic for the second time. But suddenly the magic stone started to crack, showing that the magic stone was starting to become unstable. As a result, the magic stone started to go out of control and absorbed their bodies into it. Seeing that, Werner commented that if the magic stone absorbed too much mana, then the magic stone would lose control and start absorbing anything, including living beings that had mana themselves. That was also the reason he stored the medical magical tool in that hall, so it wouldn't absorb too much mana. Hearing that, the rector, who groaned in pain because his body fused with the magic stone, kept cursing Werner. Werner just stood silently while staring at them starting to fall down along with the magic stone. Werner then brought his hands closer and started manifesting his own mana, creating a light in his palms. When the two demons argued to escape as the magic stone started to fall, Werner immediately directed the light in his hand toward the magic stone and started to shatter it without touching it directly. That made the magic stone shatter into pieces, making the bodies of the two demons also shattered. Werner said to them that it would be very dangerous if he let the magic stone continue to grow and absorb everything, so he destroyed it. The two demons immediately sprawled with parts of their bodies missing, not dead, but also unconscious. Along with the destruction of the magic stone, the lighting in the entire capital area became bright again. That showed that the mana around the city started to return to normal. Werner then turned toward Charlotte and apologized to her for making her experience something terrifying like this. Charlotte immediately ran and hugged him while crying. She was very grateful because Werner was fine. So worried, Charlotte cried like a child and made Werner's clothes wet as a result. Not long after, Hattie's voice appeared, and she also immediately flew and hugged him full of gratitude seeing him fine. Again, someone else appeared. and this time it was the Knight troops who were tasked with protecting Charlotte. The Knight apologized to Werner for arriving late. He explained that the prince had ordered them to provide assistance to Werner in handling this problem after seeing the shield magic and the rain of fireballs in the night sky. But after seeing this condition, the situation was already under control again. Therefore, he asked Werner to come with them back to the royal palace and explain what had happened. Hearing that, Werner, who didn't like formalities and also didn't like interacting, became quite startled because he was shocked. He understood that he had to explain all this chaos to the prince, which even destroyed the old academy hall. Because he felt it would be troublesome, Werner awkwardly gave a reason to refuse by saying that he still had magical tools that had to be developed immediately, so he couldn't come with them to the royal palace. Understanding Werner, who wanted to escape, the knight explained that they had been ordered to bring Werner with them back to the palace, no matter what. He also explained that the prince was already waiting for Werner's arrival there, so he really pleaded with him. Hearing that, Werner could only sigh softly and think that the prince would surely scold him for causing chaos, especially destroying the old academy hall. In the end, the chaos ended along with the sunrise. When Werner arrived at the palace and explained everything to the prince, without Werner ever thinking, the prince suddenly bowed and thanked him for the actions Werner had taken earlier. Seeing that, of course, made Werner puzzled and confused because he thought he would be scolded by him. Innocently, Werner asked what the prince was thanking him for. The prince, in a guilty tone, explained that not only did he succeed in saving Princess Charlotte, but Werner also succeeded in protecting the entire capital area of this empire from their attacks. He understood that words of thanks alone wouldn't be enough to repay the favor. Although he somewhat understood, what made Werner feel relieved was because the prince didn't scold him. He then asked about the two perpetrators of this incident, namely the rector and dean. The prince explained that with their recent actions, combined with their bad reputation, the two of them were arrested on the basis of treason. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, and that was the lightest punishment. The prince then apologized to Werner for involving him in a serious problem like this. Werner, with his flat expression, answered that he didn't mind. Then the prince questioned the magical tool that Werner brought as evidence. Did Werner know something about the magical tool used by the two perpetrators? Werner explained his understanding that the magical tool was the same as the one used by Hattie before, but this magical tool had other effects like increasing the user's mana, perhaps more like an advanced magical tool. The prince looked shocked upon hearing the answer coming from Werner's mouth, who was a genius magical tool specialist. For a moment, the prince looked reluctant to ask it, but in the end, he asked in a doubtful tone and a facial expression reluctant to get a positive answer from Werner, whether Werner could make a magical tool like this. Werner, with a reluctant facial expression, shook his head and answered that he couldn't make a magical tool like this in the near future. Even if he could, he didn't want to make it. Hearing and seeing his reaction made the prince feel relieved and also a bit shocked because Werner really didn't want to make it. After that conversation, in the end, Werner was allowed to go home, but because of his question, now the prince had a new worry. Based on the intel he got, the mastermind behind this chaos came from the Galatea Empire. He also thought about Werner's answer earlier. If Werner, who was a genius magical tool specialist, couldn't make a magical tool like that, then what kind of genius could make a magical tool like this? He wondered to himself whether in the Galatea Empire they were sharpening their fangs to direct at his empire. On the other hand, precisely in the Divine Light Church headquarters, there the high officials were gathering, and one of them discussed Werner. He didn't expect Werner could defeat their two pawns so easily. Werner's figure turned out to be more troublesome than what they thought all this time. Then one of them smiled and asked the other officials not to worry. He explained that their next plan had started to run, and this time they would surely succeed because they had the Child of Divine Light on their side. 2 days passed after the incident at the academy. On a bright morning, sunlight entered Werner's bedroom. He slowly woke up from his sleep and yawned, indicating how tired he was. He knew that after the conversation with the prince at dawn, he returned to the lab and immediately conducted research without sleeping first. Until finally he only slept on his second day. When he was sitting, his hand accidentally touched something soft, not the mattress or fabric. Something truly soft and even hard for Werner to imagine. When he opened his blanket, Hattie in her human form and Charlotte were seen there. When Charlotte woke up, she immediately screamed hysterically and reflexively covered her body by hugging Werner while asking why they were without a single piece of cloth. On the other hand, Werner just looked tired due to staying up late and asked Charlotte to calm down. Hearing Charlotte scream and question, Hattie woke up and answered in a sleepy tone that when sleeping, they had to hug each other. Hearing that, finally Werner knew that the three of them like this was Hattie's doing. Hattie explained that when their dragon race felt very tired, they would sleep while attaching their bodies to each other. Then Charlotte, with her blushing face, asked Werner to look the other way besides at her. Even before Charlotte finished her words, Werner had done it first. That made Charlotte quite shocked, confused whether to feel happy or disappointed with Werner's quick reaction. As if feeling ignored, Hattie started to pout, and she immediately hugged the two of them and invited them again to hug each other, considering she was a dragon race who considered her habit normal for other races. Of course, that made Charlotte shocked again and her face even more blushing. On the other hand, Werner reminded Hattie again that the human race was not used to appearing without clothes in front of other humans, especially the opposite sex. Not long after, from behind the door, heavy and fast footsteps were heard, as if in a hurry. Then their bedroom door opened quickly and hard, and Werner's older sister's voice was heard while calling his name in a panicked tone. She then asked about the scream earlier and asked about Werner's condition, which in her opinion was in an emergency. But when seeing Werner's room condition that could cause misunderstanding, it made the sister immediately freeze and silent. Charlotte also froze with her blushing face, while Werner just covered his face using one hand as if he was already tired of this bad situation. And yes, Hattie just put on an innocent expression as if this was normal for her. In a shocked and annoyed tone, the sister commented that she thought Werner was being attacked again by someone unknown, but it turned out to be like this. Yes, Werner understood the situation was getting worse. After the hectic morning, in the end, Werner explained the situation to his older sister. After hearing all the explanations from Werner at their dining table, the sister finally understood that it was all just a misunderstanding. But she still scolded her brother to avoid situations like that because it could make others easily misunderstand. Hearing that made Werner sigh in relief because his sister already understood. On the other hand, Charlotte just bowed silently with her blushing face. Then his sister told Werner that she had a letter for him from the academy. She explained that it seemed lately the academy had replaced all personnel in the magical tool department, including Dean. And the contents of the letter contained great hopes for Werner to return to the academy. Hearing that, Werner felt uncomfortable. He didn't like the idea of returning to the academy, but he also wanted to check the magical tools he left there. Besides, Werner also felt quite impressed because the academy had captured the perpetrators who modified all his magical tools. Werner then asked Hattie and Charlotte to come with him to the academy today. The two of them nodded understanding, especially Hattie, who agreed excitedly. Hearing the decision, the sister then told Werner that she had an agenda to handle something near the academy. Therefore, she would come with Werner and part ways midway. Werner was a bit surprised to hear it and immediately asked about his sister's agenda that took her out of the house. Considering his sister usually often seen inside the house, his sister smiled and in a somewhat proud tone answered that she would leave the house for a while to inspect their border area. Hearing that, Werner asked again whether the agenda really had to be done by his sister directly. His sister explained that the task had become a family responsibility from generation to generation, so she, as someone who would be the next family head, had to do things like this. Hearing that, Werner just made a sound that he understood. He then reached into his pocket and took out a magical tool shaped like the emblem he used to modify the pickaxe a few days ago. He then asked his sister to bring his magical tool with her. He explained that this was a protective magical tool. The tool would release protective magic around the user for a while. He also gave a tool shaped like a small board with a magic stone ball on it. He explained that it was a communication magical tool. He asked his sister to be careful out there. Hearing and seeing how caring her brother was toward her made the sister smile happily and nod understanding. She also asked Werner to be careful at the academy. After hitching a ride in his sister's horse carriage, the three of them finally arrived at the academy. Loud hammer-pounding sounds filled the academy area as there were building repairs after the incident 2 days ago. Walking in the academy corridor made Charlotte look around with eyes full of admiration, considering it was her first time entering the academy building. While walking, a woman's voice was heard greeting Werner after not meeting for so long and thanking him for coming back to the academy. The woman also in an authoritative tone said that honestly she didn't expect Werner would return to the academy. A woman with blonde hair and glasses was seen descending from the second floor. She was Fiona Lentledge, a professor as well as the new rector at the academy. Seeing someone he knew, Werner greeted her and asked about the new rector's identity. Fiona nodded, confirming her new identity as rector. Fiona then commented that Werner had a very good reputation both as a researcher and as an instructor or lecturer. Even she as rector couldn't approach the level Werner had, and that made her respect him. Besides, many people including herself rejected Werner's expulsion at that time, but because the previous rector said so, they couldn't do anything. Fiona suddenly clenched her fist very tightly, and her tone sounded full of anger when saying that she had to handle the remnants of those two idiots who caused chaos everywhere. Seeing Fiona's reaction made the two of them a bit shocked and realize how frustrated she was. Werner then explained to Fiona to calm her down that they couldn't change something that had happened. Besides, as long as he got back the magical tools he left at the academy, he already felt enough. Fiona then asked Werner to come with her. While following Fiona from behind, she explained that Werner's expulsion and the attack on the kingdom's capital, both things were not something that could be forgiven with just an apology. After a while, they arrived at a door. Fiona then opened the door and showed the room's contents while explaining that she hoped with this room she could resolve what had happened to Werner, even if only a little. Seeing the room's contents made Werner quite shocked. He knew that this was his lab when he was still at the academy. Entering and seeing all his items and magical tools still there made him ask, puzzled, to Fiona. Wasn't the previous rector had thrown away all his items? Fiona explained that on the day of Werner's expulsion, she saw everything. The previous rector even didn't listen to the rejection of Werner's expulsion at that time. Therefore, when they threw away all Werner's items, she felt at least she could secure the items they threw away. She even secured Werner's magical tools that the academy side intended to steal at that time. Fiona then bowed and in a pleading tone apologized for all the chaos the academy had done to Werner. Besides her apology, she also had one last request for Werner, where she asked Werner to return to the academy and continue his research here. She honestly said that this academy needed Werner. She explained again that if Werner agreed to return to the academy, she would double the salary during Werner's expulsion from the academy, and if Werner wanted to stop the work he did in the past, she would also allow it. When Fiona offered other benefits again, Werner interrupted her by calling her name. In a calm and clear tone, Werner answered that he wouldn't return to the academy. Hearing that, Fiona fell silent. Although she looked calm, Werner's answer quite startled her. Her hand clenched tightly on her chest, and she asked to tell her the reason Werner refused. Werner explained in the same tone that he refused her request not because he had enmity toward the academy or anything like that. The reason he refused was because he just wanted to conduct research as he pleased and at a pace determined by himself. Besides, he also had a disciple he had to train. Hearing that made Charlotte, who heard it, blush shyly and happy because she was already considered a disciple by Werner. Hearing that made Fiona smile satisfied and say that it was indeed very regrettable, but she would respect his decision. Besides, the academy side didn't fully expel Werner, so he could visit anytime. Werner was even allowed to give teaching materials like general lectures to guests at the academy or conduct experiments at this academy. She truly accepted Werner here. Hearing that made Werner smile and thank her. Suddenly Hattie descended and perched on Fiona's head. Seeing that made Fiona a bit surprised and in a puzzled tone said that from the beginning she wanted to ask this. But who was this little creature? Hattie immediately introduced herself in her happy tone and explained that she served Werner as her master. Seeing Hattie's cute smile and her small form made something inside Fiona struck. Until finally Fiona's authoritative figure completely collapsed. She immediately entered her old mode as a lover of cute things. She even in a spoiled tone offered snacks to Hattie. Werner then commented to Fiona that if looked at more closely, he felt that this room really looked unchanged at all after he was expelled. Hearing that, Fiona explained that she had someone who helped her handle all this. Not long after, a girl appeared and in an excited tone greeted Werner with the call "Professor." Looking toward the source of the voice, a girl with short hair and a hat and a cheerful smile on her face was seen. She was Creel, an academy alumna. Seeing her made Werner a bit shocked and greeted her back. Werner also explained to Charlotte that she was a former student in his class when he was still at the academy. Creel then bowed and introduced herself to Charlotte. She also explained in a proud tone to Werner that she had helped rebuild the place where Werner taught her many things before. Hearing that, Werner asked that if he wasn't mistaken, Creel currently worked at the store managed by Eugen. Was Creel coming to this academy because Fiona asked her? Creel answered in a somewhat doubtful tone that Fiona's call to her was also one of the reasons she came to the academy. But the real reason was because she was given a task to build a merchant ship. She needed many magic stones to make supporting tools for the main power, but the magic stones she had weren't enough, so she came to the academy to ask where she could get the remaining magic stones. She was able to collect about half of the quota she needed, but another problem was that magic stones with enough mana to power a ship were quite rare and expensive. Hearing that, in an excited tone, Hattie suggested to Creel to split the magic stone into two, so she could get 2 magic stones from one. The idea was rejected by Charlotte by explaining that the idea would be very difficult to do. She explained that if a magic stone was damaged, even with a little intentional damage, the magic stone would shatter and turn into dust. And even if they succeeded in splitting the magic stone into 2, the mana stored inside would be reduced to half. Creel nodded and in a sad tone explained that many researchers had tried to find a solution to this problem, but until now none of them succeeded. Werner then commented in a calm tone and a smile on his face that actually that wasn't entirely true. He then took a magic stone and took a set of stone breakers. Then he without hesitation directed the chisel and hit it with a hammer quite hard until it made Creel herself shocked and panicked. She even tried to stop her former teacher from stopping it because she was afraid the magic stone would turn into dust. But when the next strike, the magic stone didn't shatter or turn into dust, but truly split into 2 very neatly, as if the crack had followed the correct stone vein. Of course, that made Creel and the others very shocked because the understanding they believed until now was refuted before their own eyes. Werner explained that the magic stone had a core which was the source of their mana. Besides, the magic stone also had a kind of vein or channel for the mana to flow. As long as they could split the magic stone according to and following their veins or channels without damaging them, the magic stone wouldn't shatter or turn into dust. And from this, he learned something new after splitting the magic stone, where for some reasons the magic stone split into 2 would change to their original form, so now they got 2 magic stones. He would also research this phenomenon further, but for now the most important thing from this phenomenon was that both magic stones had cores exactly the same as each other. Hearing that, Creel's eyes opened wide. Werner smiled and then proved it by flowing his own mana into both magic stones, and both magic stones were seen shining brightly without losing or lacking intensity of light. Werner said that they could really make 1 magic stone into 2 magic stones literally. Seeing that evidence made Creel shocked and amazed because the quality remained the same even though it had been divided into 2. Werner said that with that method they could get double the profit than usual. Until now, magic stones on a ship were only useful as supporting tools for its main power, but this time they could build a ship as its main power. Maybe this way could work temporarily on small boats, and later it might be able to add the cargo load of a ship in one trip. Hearing that truly big discovery made Creel amazed and horrified. She then commented that not only ships used magic stones as power sources, but also almost all magical equipment both in the city and royal palace. So this discovery would give very significant economic changes. But this way didn't exist and had never been recorded in any book she had ever read. Therefore, she was curious and asked from which book Werner could know this. Innocently and honestly, Werner answered that he just discovered this yesterday. Hearing that, Creel froze for a moment before in a tone full of shock she made her puzzled sound. Werner ignored her and explained again that another fact from this way was that they could only make 2 magic stones from one same magic stone. In other words, they couldn't make more than 2. In a still shocked tone, Creel answered that even so, this way could still double the number, and this could also solve the problem of mana supply. Creel immediately bowed her body and thanked her teacher because in her opinion, she could use that way to solve her current problem. In a somewhat sad tone, she said that even though she had graduated from the academy, she still caused problems with her own problems. Werner then approached her and patted her shoulder. While smiling, he said that Creel could visit here anytime. Indeed, Creel had graduated from the academy, but she remained his disciple forever. Therefore, if Creel had something she couldn't understand, don't hesitate to come back and ask him directly. Hearing that made Creel very happy and thank him again. Seeing the closeness between Werner and his former disciple, Fiona smiled softly, but there was sadness behind it. She muttered softly that this was truly very regrettable Werner didn't rejoin the academy. She acknowledged that the curiosity, understanding, and leadership shown by Werner almost made her feel like she was seeing the founding rector of this academy, namely Professor K. But she also understood it would be very regrettable if Werner spent his life just as a professor. After all that, Werner finally left the academy while carrying a wooden box full of his old items. He felt happy about it. Even Hattie was cheerful because she got sweet snacks from Fiona. Seeing the contents of the wooden box made Charlotte amazed. She asked whether Werner made all those magical tools. Werner nodded and explained that making magical tools like this had become his daily routine. He even made a new magical tool yesterday. He took out his communication magical tool that he gave to his sister this morning. He explained that the magical tool had a function like communication that gave emergency signals. By using the magic stone splitting principle, he got another fact where the split magic stone would resonate with each other. Therefore, he used that fact and made it a magical tool to resonate when the stone was flowed with mana. He then explained how it worked. That he had given one same magical tool to his sister this morning, and if his sister flowed her mana into the magical tool, then the magic stone there would resonate with the magic stone in his magical tool. But when in the middle of the explanation, the magic stone in the tool really shone, and worse, the stone immediately shattered, as if something destroyed it from inside. Seeing that short phenomenon made Werner pause for a moment and start analyzing it. He understood that the light on the magic stone earlier meant his sister flowed her mana into it. But for the magic stone to shatter, he was still doubtful. Whether it meant the stone in his sister's magical tool also broke, so the tool he held also broke. Realizing this, there was only one thing in his mind. Something had happened to his sister, and that thought couldn't be removed from his head now.